I am assisting Dr. Alim with this evening's broadcast for Your Immunity Project, where Dr. Alim presents us with information to help us with this ever-changing global environment. We are live on Zoom. We're live on Facebook on Your Immunity Project's Facebook page, and also we're live on Dr. Alim's YouTube channel, Dr. Alim Muhammad. Make sure you share, you subscribe, and you like. We will open with prayer, and after prayer, Dr. Alim will present us with this evening's broadcast. Attention, prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of the day of requital. Thee do we serve, and thee do we beseech for help. Guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not those upon whom wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray. Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen.
Ameen.
Ameen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to everyone. This is the Your Immunity Project. I'm your host, Dr. Alim, assisted by Sister Cheryl. So here we are once again. We survived another week. So give all the praise and glory to the God above. We thank all of you for being with us. This is the Survival Show by another name. This is where we try to tell it like a TI is, in a way that reflects a way for greater survival potential, because we live at a very dangerous time. Very dangerous things are taking place all over the world that affects everybody. And so even though the Your Immunity Project began with a focus on COVID-19, and then the COVID-19 vaccine, then the COVID-19 lockdown and the mandates and all the rest of it, now the focus has expanded so that we include, or we try to include, as comprehensively as we can, all of the threats, the spectrum of threats against the survival of you and me. So welcome once again. This is the Your Immunity Project. This is where it all happens. We used to call it the hour of truth. Now it's expanded a little bit. Maybe it's an hour and a half sometimes, maybe even 2 hours sometimes. And we always like to leave a little room at the end of the broadcast to hear from you, because there's always questions that go unanswered. There's always, things on your mind that need to be a part of the conversation. We want to make this a conversation, not just a monologue. And certainly this is not a spectator sport. Survival is not a spectator sport. Survival includes all of us. It's universal. It has universal interests. We're not talking about my survival and the threats to my survival. No, we're talking about the threats to your and my survival. So that's why it's called the Survival Show, the Your Immunity Project. Because your immunity is what? It is your right to life guarantee. And without your immunity, then your right to life has no meaning. So we always go by 5 principles. The 5 principles are prevention. Prevention's number 1 because it's the most important. And then number 2 is diagnosis, because sometimes prevention is too late, or something has already happened, or it wasn't enough. And so something has gone wrong. And when something has gone wrong, what do you need? You need a diagnosis. And a diagnosis that is accurate and correct leads to the 3rd principle, which is correct treatment. A misdiagnosis leads to mistreatment. And billions of people over our planet. And one of the reasons for the existence of the Your Immunity Project broadcast in the first place is because billions of people on our planet have been misdiagnosed with something that they never had, and then mistreated, given something that they never should have been given. And now they are suffering the dire consequences of that misdiagnosis that led to mistreatment. And principle number 4 is research. Because of those unhappy consequences that affect so many people, don't we need to do research to find an answer to that problem that was created by a misdiagnosis deliberately made? and mistreatment deliberately meted out? Don't we have the obligation to do the research, to uncover the solution to this tremendous problem that has been foisted on humanity? And certainly we have the right and the obligation to do it. There are always unanswered questions. Now, one thing I learned from Minister Farrakhan many years ago when I was getting involved with the HIV pandemic. This is not my first rodeo. And he asked me what I thought the cure for HIV was in the early days of HIV. I said, I don't think there is a cure, sir. He said, oh, no, brother. Whatever Allah permits into the world of evil, he also places the solution to it somewhere. And it's up to us to find it. And then he added, he said, and sometimes he puts it in a most unlikely place. and, and that proved to be true. I had to go all the way to Kenya to find the answer to HIV in America. And of course, that was low dose alpha interferon. And that was beginning of the research career, you could say, of the Abundant Life Clinic. And now here we are at 2025, where we're faced with a new pandemic. And as you'll see from some of this evening's headlines, they're predicting that the worst is yet to come. Evidently, they planned it that way. And so we do our own research. We've done 2 clinical trials related to COVID-19. The current research is not really a clinical trial. It's a clinical survey. It's a research survey. It's all about stress because everybody's stressed out, including you and me. And so you need to compute your stress score. So if it's anywhere close to 40, that means you're about ready to blow your top. You're getting ready to have a stroke. Something terrible is getting ready to happen to you. We have to handle stress before stress handles us. And so go to the dralim.com website and you'll see the research survey there related to stress. And if your stress number is anywhere close to 40, then avail yourself of one of the protocols for stress that you could also find on the website. Now, the 5th and final principle is education. We start with prevention, diagnosis, treatment, research, and end on education. That's what we're on right now. These weekly broadcasts are educational. We try to make them as entertaining as possible, but that's impossible with some of the subject matter that we have to deal with. We're dealing with depopulation. We're dealing with mass casualties. We're dealing with loss of life, loss of health. So these are not pleasant topics, but they're necessary subjects that people have to be cognizant of because what's happening to others today could be happening to you tomorrow, unless you apply what? Principle number 1. And so in order to see what's going to happen tomorrow, we have to be aware of the trends. And so that's what these headlines begin to show us. They begin to show us what are the current trends that are going to lead to future possibilities. And if some of those future possibilities are not to my liking or a threat against my very survival, then what is it that I can do in the here and now to prevent that untoward circumstance from overcoming me at a future date? So in order to see it coming, you have to have foresight. And that's what we try to give as well as we can with these broadcasts. So Sister Cheryl, let's go to our headlines. There's quite a few. And we want to end on a positive note, if we can. Let me see if I can adjust. Yeah. It's hard to be positive with some of the things that's taking place in the world today. But there's always a bright side, and we try to find it. We're looking for it. We're looking for the answers. We're looking for the solutions. We're looking for the way out. So we're not overcome with doom and gloom. So this is the survival show. Plan on survival means that you have to have a written down plan because plan is both a verb and a noun. So where is your plan? Point to it. Pull it out. Take a look at it. Dust it off. Update it. Now, of course, if you can't pull it out, if it's not written down, then it means it doesn't exist, except as a figment in your imagination. You imagine you're going to survive. You believe you're going to survive. You hope you're going to survive. Well, why don't you make it a little bit more definite than that? Uh, the book says, the Quran, that Allah plans, and it says man plans and Allah is the best of planners. So if Allah doesn't mind planning, why don't you plan? Have it written down on paper in a notebook. Update it frequently. Take a look at all of the things that are necessary for your survival and the survival of your family and those that are close to you, and as many other people as you can take into consideration. Plan is also a verb, which means it's an action that's taking place. It has to be taking place in the present tense. So you should be asking yourself each and every morning when you're blessed to wake up and open your eyes on a brand new day, what am I going to do today to enhance my chances of survival in the future? What am I going to do today to enhance the survival potential of my family and my friends and my neighbors and my co-religionists, my community, my nation? And then get busy that day, not tomorrow, no, that day, with that survival plan. And so that's the intention of the Your Immunity Project broadcast, is to inspire you to think about your own survival in a very personal way, in a very serious way, in a very down-to-earth, practical way. And then pick up a pen and write down your thoughts on that and update it frequently, and then act on what you write down. Remember, the original man writes his history in advance, and then he walks into the history that he has already written. So write it down. Write down your survival plan, and then walk or work your way through your own plan. And then your immunity is your right to life guaranteed. Next image, please. So now here are some of the COVID-19 related headlines that are coming out in the scientific literature. I look through a couple hundred articles every week, and I try to pick out the ones that seem to be the most important. And this one stuck out because I know a lot of people who are having breathing problems, sleeping problems. And I don't know whether or not these are people who in the past were diagnosed with COVID. In other words, diagnosed or misdiagnosed, in my opinion, or whether they are people who got the vaccine as a result of the misdiagnosis. And these people are kind of lumped together nowadays, and it is called long COVID. Long after the so-called infection is over, I'm still sick. Well, that means it's not over then. Long after I got the shot and forgot about it, now I'm coming down with something. And so sometimes it's confusing. Was it the so-called COVID-19 virus that's responsible? Or was it the shot that was given in response to the COVID-19 so-called virus? I say that because they never showed me a virus. I call it the COVID-19 agent. Luc Montagnier said the whole thing was a computer code. I don't know. They never showed me anything, but I know people are sick. Whatever it was has damaged people's lungs and is causing them to have brain damage, is causing them to have problems with sleep and everything else related to survival. Next image, please. So basically what happens, and we've touched on this in previous broadcasts, you have inflammation all throughout the body. The spike protein that's in the shot, or the spike protein that was a part of the original infection, if you will. It's hard to tell the difference. I know I can't. But I know the end result is the same. Inflammation in the brain, inflammation in the lungs, inflammation in the heart, inflammation in the vascular system. And what part of the body doesn't have veins and arteries? So the lungs get inflamed, and that produces scar tissue, which thickens the membrane where the exchange of air into the bloodstream. That's how oxygen gets into your bloodstream. It goes through a membrane. That membrane has to be very, very thin. But due to inflammation, it becomes thickened. And so that exchange into the bloodstream, and it goes both ways. Carbon dioxide has to get out of the bloodstream. Otherwise, you suffer from carbon dioxide poisoning, which puts you to sleep, and sometimes permanently. And of course, oxygen has to get into the bloodstream, and that feeds the brain. So if there's something that's interfering with the exchange between the atmosphere on the outside of the body and what needs to come in and what needs to go out of the body, then obviously that's going to affect the brain first, because the brain is the most metabolically active part of the body. And it's exquisitely sensitive to a decrease in oxygen tension. And so even if the exchange is only reduced a tiny, tiny little bit, it affects the function of the brain. And it produces what people commonly refer to as brain fog. Not only can I can't catch my breath, but now I can't think. I can't breathe and I can't think. Well, I think those would be categorized as vital functions related to survival. Next image, please. I can't think and I can't breathe. Okay, what's next? Now, some years ago, when they were naming all of these variants of the COVID-19 agent according to the Greek alphabet, they kind of got stuck on the Omicron. Evidently, that was the gain of function virus that seemed to be most agreeable to these people who have created this biological weapon. So they went through many, many variants, but it seems that the Omicron is the one that does the most damage. And now they have upgraded the Omicron to the EG5.1, the HK.3, and the XBB.1.9.1. And so these upgraded gain of function variants of the Omicron that you heard about 2 or 3 years ago are more lethal and more transmissible than the original variant. Meaning that if you get it, it's more likely to kill you. And if you get it, you're more likely to transmit it to other people. So those are the qualities looked for in the development of a biological weapon: high lethality and high transmissibility. Next image, please. And when you get the perfect balance between lethality and transmissibility, now you have the perfect biological weapon. So now this is an image related to a study that shows the inflammation that's going on in people's brains that we already mentioned. Next image, please. The SARS-CoV-2 spike protein detected in brain arteries. In what? 43.8%? Wait a minute. You mean Joe Biden got 227 million Americans to get the shot, and you mean that 43.8% of 227 million people have the spike protein in their brain arteries? Well, that's almost half the country. I mean, if I'm doing the quick math here, I mean, you're talking about like 100 million Americans walking around with brain arteries inflamed with the spike protein. Goodness gracious, what's going on? Well, they wish they could. I guess it's hard for them to imagine what's going on. I imagine if you have the spike protein in your brain arteries, it's hard for you to imagine exactly what's going on anymore, because you're in a perpetual fog and you don't know what the hell is going on. Next image, please. About anything. Think about that. 100 million Americans walking around with inflamed brain arteries. Now, here's a blast from the past, an oldie but goodie. See, the original biological weapon was called HIV. You remember that. That was 30, 40 years ago, right? And it did what it did, but it never lived up to expectations to carry out a full-fledged global depopulation agenda, even though they threatened that that's what it was supposed to do. But it kind of petered out. And then they came up with this one. The Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, MERS. And they tried this one out, and it was more lethal than HIV was. But as I mentioned before, lethality is one thing, but it has to be very transmissible. And this wasn't very transmissible, even though it was somewhat lethal. And so even though it was discarded as a failed biological weapon, not suitable for producing mass casualties, nonetheless, it's still in the environment. And here's two people, Muslim pilgrims apparently, went to Saudi Arabia and picked up the MERS virus and brought it to France. Now, of course, in France, you have a whole lot of immune deficient people because France is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. So even though MERS originally turned out to be a dud, or was thought to be a dud, it might make a resurgence. So we'll keep our eye on France and see what happens. Next image, please. Now, what's Trump up to? I guess the whole world wants to know what Trump is up to. He seems to be up to everything evil and bad. And of course, he's the number one suspect. I mean, he took credit for developing the warp speed vaccine that's killing everybody. I mean, these headlines that we go over wouldn't even exist except for Trump's first term when he brought in the warp speed vaccine and hired Pfizer, the most notorious criminal corporation in the world, to develop it along with Moderna and the corrupt Anthony Fauci. I mean, Trump took full credit for all of that back in the day. So what's he up to now? Was he trying to redeem himself? Trump orders review of why U.S. childhood vaccination schedule has more shots than peer countries. And there's RFK Jr. standing behind him with a big frown on his face. I mean, I really wonder what's going on. Or maybe he's just trying to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know. And a lot of times, whatever he says in public, the actual reality is the exact opposite. He might be ordering an increase in childhood vaccines. For all I know, you can't believe anything coming out of this man's mouth. Next image. Go look up the word Trumpism. See what the original meaning of the word Trumpism, the barefaced lie. The CDC vaccine panel votes to end universal hepatitis B vaccines for newborns. Well, if this is true, that's good news. I've told the story before how when my classmate, David Satcher, he became the Surgeon General. And before that, he was the director of the CDC. And he used to come by my office, and I asked him one time, how come you, David Satcher, how come you are authorizing hepatitis B vaccines to be given to babies within the first 24 hours of life? And he says, you have to get them while you got them. That was his answer. And so now it looks like the vaccine panel is reversing that kind of thinking to say, no, we're not going to vaccinate newborn babies against a sexually transmitted disease. That sounds positive, doesn't it? I hope it's true. Next image. I know the babies will be happy. Now, Donald Trump, of course, as we pointed out, was responsible during his first term for the development of the warp speed vaccine. And he's been on the attack against Harvard University all during his second term. Now it looks like Harvard University is firing back. There's a professor at Harvard saying that the vaccines are bioweapons of mass destruction. In other words, he's accusing Donald Trump in his first term, instead of actually producing a vaccine, which it really wasn't a vaccine, And even the CEO of some of these pharmaceutical companies admitted, we just called it a vaccine. It wasn't ever really a vaccine. It always was gene therapy. And now these professors, this professor at Harvard is claiming that these so-called vaccines are really biological weapons of mass destruction. So he's saying that Donald Trump and anybody else that has something to do with it is guilty of mass murder. Next image, please. They might be on to something. Those are smart people up there at Harvard. Now, the greatest fear among vaccinologists, these are people who develop vaccines, is the creation of a vaccine that is not only ineffective, which of course this one is, but which exacerbates disease. Unfortunately, COVID vaccines have a history of enhancing disease. Just as you would expect, a vaccine that's not really a vaccine, but that is really a biological weapon, just as you would expect such a biological weapon to do. It would enhance disease, not prevent disease. Next image, please. We're just connecting the dots and using logic. Now, this is just showing you how effective this agent was in provoking some kind of an immune response in anybody exposed to it. So again, take a screenshot of this. You can study it. I'm going to post the article on my Telegram so you can read it in detail. But it's just showing that it's overwhelming the immune system. The proteins that are a part of this chimeric virus, if that's what it is, just overwhelm the ability of the immune system to respond. Next image, please. So here it is. U.S. Harvard professor confirms through an official court affidavit that the COVID vaccines are bioweapons of mass destruction. Now, here's who he's naming in this affidavit. Now, affidavit, that's a legal term. I'm not a lawyer, but from what I've been told, an affidavit is basically the true statement of a person that's notarized, and it's as though it's a statement under oath in court, and it has to be recognized by courts as a true statement. So when someone issues an affidavit like this, the court has to review that and respond to it. They can't ignore an affidavit. And so he's saying that the FDA, the CDC, the Department of Defense, top officials, and COVID vaccine executives should be charged with mass murder. Now think who that would include. Starting with Donald Trump, everybody that was at the FDA, everybody that was at the CDC, everybody that, well, not everybody in the Pentagon, but everybody in the Pentagon, because we found out before from doing research that the Department of Defense that was connected with Ukraine, they had 46 biological weapons laboratories going there. This was being run not by DARPA, it was being run by something called DARPA, the biological, it's like the biological equivalent of DARPA. They were running it. So according to this Harvard professor's affidavit, all of these people and all of their staff that were working for them, down to, the least bureaucrat, they should be charged with mass murder. And of course, we have the corpses to prove it. So that takes care of habeas corpus. If somebody said, where's the corpse? We got millions of them to show you. Next image, please. So Dr. Fauci should be charged with mass murder. Bill Gates. And see, it didn't start with COVID-19. See, this would be an indictment related to COVID-19. But no, these guys go all the way back to HIV. I told you how they developed HIV and then went to MERS, and then there was something else in between there, and then went to SARS-CoV-1. Then again with SARS-CoV-2. Okay? Gain of function research. So you're talking about criminals that have been engaged in organized criminal activity, developing biological weapons to commit mass murder as a part of a depopulation agenda. We're talking about people going back 30 and 35 and 40 years ago. That's how far back it goes. Look at this, an SV40 monkey virus. See, that SV stands for simian virus number 40. Simian means monkey. So the SB40 monkey virus that showed up in 1951 through 1955 in the original polio vaccine. This was back with the first introduction of the polio vaccine back in the 50s. And that's when they discovered that it was contaminated with at least 40 monkey viruses. And the 40th one that they discovered, they also learned that it causes cancer. And so then that's when, some years later, as they realized the potential of what was called an oncovirus, a virus that causes cancer is called an oncovirus. So once they realized the potential that they had in their hands, a cancer-causing virus, then their wheels started turning. And that's when, by this time, Nixon is president, and he calls a halt to biological warfare research. Now, of course, anytime somebody like Tricky Dick Nixon says that he's banning research into biological weapons, you know he's lying, and he was. And that was the beginning of the research, using SV40 as the base of it to come up later on with something called HIV. And then MERS, and then SARS-CoV-1, SARS-CoV-2, which is where we are today. And it all started back in the 50s when they discovered a cancer-causing virus in the polio shot. And so the question here is, how could this agent just accidentally end up in the vaccines that are being produced 75 years later? Next image, please. It couldn't happen accidentally. And that's why these people should be charged with mass murder, because that's exactly what they are carrying out, mass depopulation of the planet. Now, this caught my attention because this supports what I like to say about the green cake. A lot of people know about green cake who were my patients, because that was a superfood that I developed to get my patients better quicker. And my son's producing it now, and you can order it. Of course, the production level is not what it needs to be to meet the demand, but it's made with spirulina, which is blue-green algae, or blue cyanobacteria, and also chlorella. And now it's showing it has a powerful effect against the virus. And this is the virus that's being carried, they say, by a tick that's invading the country. But anyhow, if it's going to work against one virus, it's going to work against all viruses. So one of the things that we're going to make sure of as we go forward with the development of our virtual online health site, dralim.com, is that we will make the green cake available as much as possible because it contains the adequate amounts of spirulina and chlorella, the blue-green algae, that has powerful effects against viruses. Next image, please. As well as being super nutritious. Super nutritious. Let your medicine be your food. The prime example of that. The only problem with spirulina is it tastes so bad. And so the miracle of green cake is I made it taste so good. Historic. And it is. A medical school pays students. Isn't that something? As expensive as medical school tuition is, now this medical school suddenly had a change of heart, and they're paying students and employees $10 million. No, it's only because they tried to force these students to take the COVID shot, and they took them to court. Maybe that's what some of you should have done. You should have taken your employer or whoever to court, and maybe they'd be paying you $10 million today. Next image, please. Sometimes it does pay to fight back. You don't have to give in all the time. They said you can't fight City Hall and win. Well, they might have been lying. That might have been propaganda put out by City Hall. Now look at this, bioengineered food. I just stopped talking about green cake and the Add Life Super Green Powder. So in one sense, I could claim I bioengineered those foods. Well, with all natural ingredients though. They're talking about something completely different. They're talking about doing the same kind of genetic engineering to livestock and to even plants. Or even go worse than that. Extract the genetics out of a plant or out of an animal and then use it in some kind of a biodynamic factory where they come up with artificial meat, artificial vegetables. In fact, sometimes, all of the living things that we eat as food is carbon based, just like we are. Do you know that some of this bioengineered food is not even carbon based? It's based on silicon, just like computers. So some of these major brands of food food products, really, there's not really food, it's food products made in a factory, bioengineered in a factory, sold on American food store shelves to American citizens. And they think they're eating real pasta. They think they're eating real rice. But if they read the label, and sometimes it's not even on the label, they're actually eating bioengineered food, artificial meat. We showed headlines last week, Campbell's Soup Company. You think you're eating chicken noodle soup. No, that was bioengineered chicken. That's fake chicken. That's not real chicken. Next image, please. So that makes it incumbent upon you to do what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to do years ago. Get your mouth out of the white man's kitchen, because this is what happened to it. He saw the trends coming, and he gave us the preventative. See? Scientists are turning human brain cells into functional computers. What? Well, I guess if they get human beings to eat silicon food, then maybe that'll have some effect on your brain cells, change your brain cells into silicon so they be compatible with silicon computer chips. I mean, I don't know what they're talking about here. Scientists are turning human brain cells into functional computers. And where are they getting the human brain cells from anyhow? So the article they talk about, they were playing digital computer games with laboratory dishes full of brain cells. And they said they're going to use them in computing and interfaces with computers. And I guess this is part of the transhuman agenda. Is that what we're talking about here? Half human, half robot. That's what we're talking about here. Next image, please. I know Elon Musk talking some crazy stuff. Now look at this headline. We are being handled. Misled or misled. How do you pronounce that word? Misled, meaning deceived? Or do you pronounce it misled? I guess it's the same thing. When you're being misled, you are being misled. We are being handled, misled and misled, and I'm not going to pronounce the other word, by Health and Human Services, the FDA, the NIH, the CDC, and all. There is zero intent to now or ever cancel, stop, rescind. This is Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone, Bourla, that's Mr. Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. Moderna, of course, that's Anthony Fauci's outfit. See, Mode, RNA. BioNTech is actually the subcontractor to Pfizer. Pfizer being the #1 criminal organization in the world, criminal corporation in the world. They don't actually make vaccines. Their subcontractor is a company in Germany called BioNTech. And the CEO there, Sahin. In other words, what they're saying is that this is the whole new paradigm I call it the vaccine paradigm that's being ushered in by high tech. In other words, old-fashioned medicine required a doctor. You had to go to a doctor or some other healthcare professional and get an examination. And that might involve blood tests. That might involve x-rays, all kinds of things to make a diagnosis. And then the treatment had to be administered by a human being after a diagnosis had been made and confirmed. And that's the old paradigm of medicine. But how do you deliver health care to human beings by robots and machines and computers? Oh, well, you can bypass the diagnostic part. Just accumulate a whole lot of money, buy off politicians, and then mandate a vaccine. And then the companies like Pfizer and Moderna, they'll churn out the vaccines because it's been mandated by the government. Nobody has any choice whether you want to or not. It's either the jab or your job or some other coercive measure like that, guaranteeing huge profits for these corporations that are making government mandated vaccines. And all they had to do was buy the politicians to devise the policy to make this thing work. And so that's why this headline makes so much sense. This is the new profit model. They're making so much money doing it this way. Why would they ever go back to the old way? Next image, please. If you had to make a diagnosis, that usually costs money. That's what they're complaining about. Obamacare is too expensive. Giving all these people x-rays and MRI scans and blood tests of every sort. That's too expensive. That cuts in on the profits. So anyhow, this is just a continuation of that same headline. And basically the author is saying this whole process is going to be complete by November 2028. When all of what you have known of traditional medical practice that included, diagnostic procedures and all the rest of it, all that's going to disappear. And all you're going to be left with is mandated mRNA vaccines, mandated by a surveillance government. Next image, please. You say, well, how are they going to make me take a vaccine if I don't want to? Well, there's DARPA again, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. That's a part of the Pentagon. So DARPA is running the chemtrail program, for example. And in part, that program is being financed by Israel. So DARPA works hand in hand with Israel, with the Israeli Defense Force. And so they're working hand in hand to develop diverse means of surveillance of human beings. So when they point out, for example, that in Gaza, that is the most highly surveilled area on planet Earth. And that's why they know that October 7th had to be an inside job, because how could an outbreak, a prison outbreak like that take place unless it was an inside job, when you have the greatest surveillance per square inch of any part of planet Earth? Well, of course, that was a joint project by DARPA and the Israeli Defense Force. And they're trying out all their surveillance software in Gaza, in the West Bank, in that part of the world, trial testing it to see how well it works, so it can be broadly applied elsewhere, such as back home in the United States. So what this is all about is the implantable biosensors that are being developed by DARPA to watch over everybody. In other words, Big Brother wants to watch over you for your own good, to protect you against things like terrorism and misinformation. Next image, please. So they want to watch over you with implantable devices. implantable biosensors to see how your heart rate is doing, to see how your blood pressure is doing, or your hormonal levels. And maybe if they need a little adjusting electronically, we can adjust your hormonal levels. We can adjust your heart rate. We can adjust your blood pressure and everything about you. Next image, please. With implantables, with wearables, Wuhan Gates, underskin microchip for COVID. Pentagon showed injectable hydrogel funded by Obama to control people. See, now think how long ago that Obama was president. The technology has come a long way since Obama's days. See, back in his day, they were talking about under the skin microchips, implantable electronics. That's old fashioned by now. Think how many upgrades have taken place in your cell phone since Obama's days. Well, that's how many upgrades they have had in this technology. They don't have to inject it anymore. Next image, please, to control people. In fact, a lot of it was already injected. Don't forget the fact that the people that got the COVID shot, they show up on the Bluetooth. They're putting out Bluetooth signals. They're connected to the Internet of Things. They're already injected with nano electronics, even though it's not necessary anymore. Look at this. More than a third of Americans who were vaccinated versus COVID-19 had side effects, many lethal. Now, again, I already pointed out the statistics I remember. They said that 227 million Americans got the shot. So what's 1/3 of 227 million? Something like 70, 80 million. So 70, 80 million Americans walking around with side effects, or maybe the ones that died are not walking around anymore. But 1/3 of Americans who were vaccinated are having these terrible side effects: the inflammation of the brain, the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, the vaccine-induced immune deficiency syndrome, the vaccine enhancement of diseases that were previously there. They just got worse. Not to mention the turbo cancer. Next image, please. We're talking about an effective biological a weapon of mass destruction. Now, who would carry out such a dastardly agenda as depopulation? Who would do such a thing? What kind of person would you have to be to carry out such a depopulation agenda? Mass murdering people left and right. Well, you would have to be either a Nazi, a mobster, or evidently you would have to be a member of the intelligence industrial complex. In other words, a CIA agent, an FBI agent. That's the kind of person you would have to be. You would have to be a Mossad agent. You would either have to be a Nazi, a mobster, a Mossad agent, a CIA agent in order to carry out this type of mass murder campaign. Well, are there any such people in the world that you know of? I think you know the answer to that question. Next image, please. So we're dealing with Nazis, we're dealing with criminals. If Pfizer is the #1 criminal corporation in the world, well, you're dealing with organized crime. Organized as a business corporation to deal out death and destruction to millions of people efficiently and turn a handsome profit while doing so. So now here is the FBI is making a list of American extremists, the ones that Donald Trump calls domestic terrorists. And somebody leaked a memo again. About the only thing that gets out of the government nowadays is what leaks. It's a leaky government, I guess. A government of leaks. So now the FBI is making a list of American extremists. I wonder if that includes Bill Gates. I wonder if Bill Gates' name is on the list. I wonder whose name is on the list. Is Albert Bourla's name on the list? Is Anthony Fauci's name on the list? Robert Ballone's name on the list? Whose name is on the list? The CEOs of these criminal corporations that made this weapon of mass destruction, are their names on the list? I bet not. I bet the people whose names are on the list are the people who raised the red flags, who sounded the alarm, who alerted, or at least tried to alert the American people through social media. I wonder if my name's on the list. I know they were aware enough of me to kick me off of every social media platform except Telegram. I'm still holding on Telegram. They said, well, aren't you back on Twitter, now known as X? No. They let everybody else back on. They ain't let me back on. And I definitely don't want to be on Facebook no more because I don't hang out in bad neighborhoods. But guess who's going to be on the list? It's not going to be the actual criminals who are carrying out mass murder. No, it's going to be the people who are extreme enough in their views to think that there's something wrong with mass murder. Next time he's being perpetrated by the government and government agencies. And here's the leaked memo. You can find it on the internet from the Office of the Attorney General. In other words, you would think that she would be arresting the arch criminals, the international global criminals like Albert Bourla, who have killed millions of people like Anthony Fauci. You would think they would already be behind bars or swinging from the gallows. But no, they're coming against the people who protested vaccine mandates. People who posted information on social media about the dangers of vaccination. That's who they're going after. Those are the extremists. Those are the domestic terrorists that terrorized Donald Trump. Because there would be people like that who would actually raise and point the finger at Donald Trump and call him a mass murderer. And he's terrorized by that. So he would call such people who point out the actual facts and the reality of the situation, he would call them domestic terrorists because he's terrorized by the truth that they would tell. See, what's going to happen when there are international tribunals? I mean, we already found out the only type of people who do this kind of stuff are Nazis and mobsters. And they always end up in front of somebody's court. The original Nazis in World War II, they ended up in front of the Nuremberg Tribunal. Well, what do you think is eventually going to happen to these criminals? They're going to end up in front of somebody's tribunal, and they're terrified at the prospect because who's going to come up and testify against them? Who's going to be the witnesses for the prosecution? People like you and me. So to head that off, they're going to declare people like you and me to be domestic terrorists. Next image, please. And this is the first step of it. See? Department of Justice memo on domestic terrorists. Now, who would qualify to be a domestic terrorist? Opposition to law or immigration enforcement? Well, how many people are opposed to what ICE is doing? And we pointed out last week on the 19th element, the ICE agents are being trained by the IDF. And in fact, some of the ICE agents are IDF soldiers. And some of the ICE agents are being trained in Israel, in Gaza. And some of the tactics that they're using against so-called illegal immigrants in America, they learned those tactics in Gaza from the Israelis. It looks like the Israelis are running the immigration enforcement service in America. And of course, the same for local law enforcement. Why don't you check and see, did your local police department get training in Israel? And is that why there's so much police brutality in your city or your town? Because they were all trained by the IDF in Israel. And in fact, do you have some Israeli defense force personnel working in your local police force. They're certainly working with the FBI, certainly working with ICE, arresting Americans. Can you imagine that? Israeli Defense Force personnel arresting American citizens and deporting some of them out of the country, calling them illegal immigrants. But if you're opposed to such things, you might be considered to be a domestic terrorist if you have extreme views in favor of mass migration and open borders. If you have adherence to, quote, radical gender ideology. In other words, that you think a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and that there's only two sexes. You might be a domestic terrorist. Anti-Americanism. What the hell does that mean? Anti-Americanism. If you're against all of the crimes that America has committed over the centuries of her existence, that makes you a domestic terrorist? Anti-capitalism. Really? So if you believe in socialism, or you believe in any other type of economic system, then you could be considered to be a domestic terrorist? Anti-Christianity. I mean, if you have a different religious viewpoint than whoever makes up these rules in the Department of Justice, that you could be considered to be a domestic terrorist? Well, would that include Muslims? Are Muslims considered to be anti-Christian? Are Jews anti-Christian? I mean, who would be considered to be a domestic terrorist? It seems like the definition of a domestic terrorist could be anything that somebody wants it to be. Hostility to traditional views on family, religion, and morality. Whose traditional views? Whose tradition are you talking about? But you better support it, otherwise you could be considered a domestic terrorist. And support for overthrowing the U.S. government, even though the preamble to the Constitution gives the people the right that when the government has become tyrannical, they do have the authority to overthrow the government and replace it with one that respects their constitutional rights. But if you support the Constitution, evidently, you could be considered to be a domestic terrorist. Now, I can recall that the word terrorist that's so commonly used today, that was a term that was invented by the Israeli Mossad. And of course, it has no real definition. What was the definition of a terrorist? One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So what's the definition of a terrorist? It's ambiguous. It could be anything that somebody decides that it is. And so here we have a situation where the Department of Justice, and don't forget now, General Albert Pike's statue, the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, his statue's out in front of the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice is going to determine who is a domestic and who is not a domestic terrorist, even though there is no set definition in law as to what that term even means. Next image, please. So Donald Trump said some of the Democrats are domestic terrorists because they don't like his policies. So countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. And this is a white paper out of the White House. Next image, please. So they're serious about this. They're going after domestic terrorists, whatever they are. They don't even have to know what they are to go after them. This goes into some of the details of how they define that and what they may intend to do. So take a screenshot. It's too busy. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Next image, please. Now, here's an article that caught my interest. How Israeli linked operatives and firms are embedded in U.S. cyber security systems. It talks about the fact that Israeli Mossad, what do they call it? Unit 8200. that runs out of Tel Aviv, and it operates the Israeli intelligence service all over the world, carrying out assassinations. You know, when the pagers exploded in Lebanon and places all over the world, the assassinations taking place in Doha and other places, the attempt to, what do you call it, decapitate the government in Iran, all that's being run by Unit 8200, they call it. That's Mossad in Tel Aviv. And so what this article goes into great length and detail to show is that Unit 8200, Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv, Israel, is running cybersecurity systems in all of the agencies of the United States government. And what this means is that Israeli Mossad agents in Tel Aviv have access to every keystroke being made on every computer in every government agency inside the United States. That every government agency, in other words, is being spied upon and surveilled from Israel. And some of these are private firms that are doing it. And these are private firms that have been set up by former Israeli spies. And so these Israeli spy firms in Tel Aviv, they know before you know what's being talked about in the State Department, what's being talked about in the Department of Defense. And of course, referring to the previous slide of domestic terrorism, they would be the number one source of information about who is a domestic terrorist. I mean, suppose somebody in the Pentagon believes in the U.S. Constitution. Well, then, see, these Israeli linked firms, they would be able to alert somebody that we have a domestic terrorist in the Pentagon who believes in the Constitution, who takes his oath to defend the Constitution seriously. He's a domestic terrorist. He needs to be neutralized. And then you'll read about a headline where some admiral, some general, you know, got dismissed, got fired, or worse, found dead. Yeah, maybe Charlie Kirk became a domestic terrorist because he started expressing some extremist views. He had the extreme view that he thought that it was something wrong with a foreign government interfering with the affairs of the American people. So with such extreme views, you can easily see how he would qualify as a domestic terrorist to be neutralized. You know how terrorists have to be handled. The only language that they understand is violence. So that's how you have to handle terrorists. Look what Donald Trump is handling so well down there in the Caribbean and in the Pacific. He's handling those narco-terrorists. I mean, he's put narco-terrorists, Maduro on notice that he ain't playing around with no narco-terrorists any longer like Joe Biden. He's stamping down on it. And the Secretary of War, he's proud of the fact that he's blowing up narco-terrorists in fishing boats. And so the Israelis probably let them know that Maduro was a narco-terrorist. These Israeli-linked operatives, they probably told them which fishing boats are carrying drugs. Next image, please. So has there been a takeover of the American government by Israel? If Israel's providing all of the data to the government personnel, was that Israeli propaganda that's guiding Pentagon policy, State Department policy, guiding the President of the United States himself? And here's the company, Axonius, I guess that's how you say it, was founded by former operatives from Israel's intelligence unit, 8200. The platform centralizes data from IT tools used by agencies, giving, quote, visibility and control over all types and number of devices. This means that the administrators in Tel Aviv can theoretically track device usage, logins, website access, and can even disable devices or accounts for millions of US federal employees. I mean, that sounds like total control over US federal employees. In every agency, in every department of government, somebody in Tel Aviv is monitoring and tracking device usage, logins, website access, can even disable devices or accounts. That sounds like total control. Next image, please. From Tel Aviv. That explains a lot, doesn't it? But how could you have total control over people? Because people have free will, don't they? Don't people have free will? People don't have to do what you tell them to do. How can you control free, sovereign individuals? How about this? Liquid metal patches turn any fabric into wearable electronics. You mean all you have to do to embed like a computer chip into a t-shirt, into a pair of jeans, into your undies, and now you're electronically hooked up. Liquid metal patches turned into fabric into wearable electronics. Researchers have developed electronic patch that could make wearable technology easier to apply and customize. They'll customize it just for you. Next image, please. Customized suit, electronic suit. So these Israeli tech firms can monitor your every move. Look at this, e-textiles and wearable electronics can enable diverse applications from healthcare, diverse applications from healthcare and environmental monitoring to robotics. I mean, it would turn you into a robot. You put one of these suits on and now you're a robot. And human machine interfaces. Hey, is this the same thing as like brain cells, human brain cells being used as computers? Is that what we're talking about here? Our work advances this exciting area by creating iron-on soft electronics that can be rapidly and robustly integrated into a wide range of fabrics. Whoa. Whoa, wearable electronics. Next image, please. What's in your Nikes nowadays? Now, there's a big debate, of course, in healthcare. We've talked about the old paradigm in healthcare. Then, of course, Nixon brought in the HMOs, and that guaranteed that the big insurance companies got 15% of the healthcare budget off the top. That's what managed care meant. The government's still spending the same amount of money on healthcare. You and I are spending the same amount of money on healthcare. And then under the managed care system brought in by Nixon, then they get 15% guaranteed profit off the top. Then they use 85% that's left to administer 100% of the healthcare. Now, you know that math doesn't work. How are you going to deliver 100% of healthcare with only 85% of the resources for healthcare? The only way you can do that, of course, is to cut back on the healthcare. And that's what they've done, the denial of care. And so now there's a big debate over Obamacare because Obama extended Obamacare program, Affordable Care Act, so-called, extended government coverage to all of the Americans that wanted it. Everybody that didn't have otherwise health insurance, hey, you could get Obamacare, and the government's going to cover the full cost of everything that needs to be done. And unlike the HMOs, they don't necessarily get the 15% off the top. So they can indulge in all kinds of expensive medical procedures. And when I looked at the details back in the day, when Obamacare was approved, I said, oh, this is going to bankrupt the country. If they try to do this is going to bankrupt the country, because how on one hand can you make everybody sick with vaccines and bad food, polluted air and water, and then you're going to say you're going to cover all of the illnesses that you just created? That's unsustainable. And so we're at the point where all of this is breaking down. And so what's being threatened, just to bring it to the point, what's being threatened is the country is bankrupt. If Trump cannot raise this $3 trillion, and he's been desperately trying to raise it, and so far has been unsuccessful, then it means the government is bankrupt and is going to default on its sovereign debt. And it means that massive cuts have to be made in the government budget. And what's first on the list is what they call Obamacare. And that includes Medicaid, Medicare. And of course, Trump also declared war on these insurance companies, accusing them of unfair practices. And so he's going to take them down. So private insurance companies, private health insurance, government health insurance is all about ready to crash. But yet your health needs remain. Next image, please. So what's the response to that? See, this is the Your Immunity Project. So we point out problems, because that's the first step in atonement. You got to point out what's wrong. That's like making a diagnosis. But then you have to come up with a solution. So the solution that we're coming up with is called the Abundant Life Healthcare Plan, to replace Obamacare, to replace Blue Cross Blue Shield, to replace Kaiser Permanente, to replace all of those commercial insurance plans that are so expensive and so short on delivering what is promised. None of them actually deliver on their promise. None of them deliver on making you healthy. Most of the time it's because they can't make a diagnosis. And even if they do make a diagnosis occasionally, they can't do anything with it. So that's why the populations are getting sicker and sicker. The life expectancy for the first time in American history is going down. It's going down. You're not healthier than your parents. You're less healthy than your parents and your grandparents. That has something to do with the food quality going down. It has to do with everything going down in America. And so now Uncle Sam is broke. They're trying to come up with $3 trillion by the end of the year. And if they can't do it, then they're going to shut down the healthcare system. They're going to shut down education. They're going to shut down everything that needs to be shut down, because $3 trillion, that's a whole lot of money. So what's the alternative once that takes place? It's what I'm calling the Abundant Life Healthcare Plan. So let me tell you about it. Next image. So out of the Your Immunity Project comes something very practical that is still a project. This is a project of mine, but it affects you and it could benefit you. So it's a healthcare plan, and it goes all the way back to 30 years ago at the Million Man March. See, this is not a new idea, the Abundant Life Healthcare Plan. I announced that at the Million Man March. I asked everybody in attendance, if we had a black healthcare plan, would you switch from Blue Cross Blue Shield? Would you sign up for it? Almost every hand in the audience went up. But at the time, we did not have the ability to actually make good on that offer. And we still don't have the ability to fully respond, but we do have some ability. And so as Booker T. Washington said, lay down your buckets where you are. So we're going to lay down our buckets with what we have right now and do the best we can right now. And so we're announcing in 2025 to be launched in 2026, the 4 phases of healing in 9 steps. So in total, just like the steps of atonement, 9 steps. The steps from where you are right now to perfect total health, you have to take 9 basic steps. And that's basically what the Abundant Life Health Plan is all about, is how you take those 9 steps. And it's different from the other healthcare plans that you're used to, because none of them ever got you healthy. They never got you better. But this is a plan that's designed to get you healthy and get you better, so that you can stay healthy. And then in the future, your healthcare needs will basically go down to 0. I mean, that would be the whole point. Ain't nothing wrong with me. I don't need to do nothing. So that's the whole point of the Abundant Life Healthcare Plan, is to get you in that state of perfect homeostasis, perfect balance, perfect health. And another way of looking at it is the recovery of your God-given potential to survive. Next image, please. So we're going to tell you how to sign up for it. And it's not that expensive either. So 4 phases of healing in 9 steps. Next image, please. I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. So isn't it about time that that prophecy be fulfilled? Of course it is. Aren't you ready for it? Of course you are. You're tired of being sick. You're tired of being less than what you know you're supposed to be. Why is the spirit so willing, but the flesh is so weak? It's because you haven't taken these 9 steps. So here's the contents of the plan real quickly. Step number 1, basic evaluation. Something's wrong. Okay, what is it? So this is all about arriving at an accurate diagnosis. And we have various means and methods of doing that. The ultimate of which is using the autonomic response technique, where we can get a very specific functional organ diagnosis that we know the quality of the function of every single organ in your body. We test 40 different organs. 40 different organs. And over 180 data points related to those 40 organs. So then the evaluation is complete. Everything is known. And what is known in principle is whatever is wrong in the body is because of something went wrong in the food. Either something was missing from the diet or something is in the diet that should be missing. And so step number 2 is dietary correction. What is your right diet? Not just in general, what is the right diet for most people? No, what is your individual right diet? What are the foods that you should eat that do you the most good? And what are the foods that you should avoid, if any? What are your food intolerances? And of course, we do that with food diaries and education. The basis of which, of course, is how to eat to live. Now, the evaluation indicated that, then this is step number 3, indicated that some part of the bodies or organs in the body were not functioning at full potential. So what organ in the body was the weakest? What's the weakest link in the chain? That becomes our priority. And so through nutritional intervention, we bring that priority organ up to full function. And usually by so doing, many of the other weak organs, they also come up to full strength. Now, there might be several cycles of doing that before all of the organs, 100% of the organs in the body are testing strong. Then we are at the 4th step. And this is usually signaled when the liver becomes the priority. And the liver, of course, is the major organ of detoxification. And through the evaluation, we already knew how much mercury was in your body. We already knew you had arsenic. We already knew that you had this, that, and the other. Now it's time for the major detoxification to remove it all. And usually that's a process that takes place over a 21-day period of time. In extremely toxic situations, maybe longer than 21 days. But on average, the detoxification is a 21-day process. So that's the 4th step. Now, once the body has been purified of all toxins and poisons, 100%, nothing left. What we find is that a lot of the tissues that contain those toxins now have gaps in them, have holes in them, because some of those toxins were just placeholders in the place. For example, you might have cesium, which is a radioactive element, but the heart had some of it in place of calcium because there was a calcium deficiency. So now we got rid of the cesium, but now there's a gap that has to be filled with the proper nutrient, which in this case would be calcium. So deficiency correction, tissue rebuilding. Those are steps 5 and 6. They go together. Now, once all of the tissues have been rebuilt and are 100% strong, like they're supposed to be, All of the organs are functioning at 100%. Now we're at stage number 7, called fine tuning. Always referring back to step number 1. In the evaluation, one of the questions that you had to answer, what are your health goals? Why do you need to be healthy? What are you trying to accomplish in life? So now all of the deficiencies are out of the way and balance has been restored, but now you need fine tuning in the direction of your goal. And I always tell the story about one of my patients. His goal was return to the opera stage. He was an opera singer. And he got sick and couldn't sing anymore. So when we got to stage number 7, hey, what was your goal? I want to get back on the stage. And so we fine-tuned his voice and his diaphragm and, the things that were relevant to refining a singing voice. And that involved yoga and other things, you see? And then the day came when he was back on the stage in Germany. And then steps number 8, number 9 are the result of the previous 7 steps. When you actually measure now the physiologic age. Maybe I should say remeasure it. Part of the original evaluation was to make a comparison between a person's chronological age and their physiologic age. Haven't you heard it said that some people look younger than their age and other people look older than their age? See, that's the discrepancy between chronological age and physiologic age. When you're 60 years old, people expect you to look like you're 60 years old. Age reversal means that no matter what your age is, you're going to look younger. Now, in the books, How to Eat to Live, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, I will have you back to the age of 16. My interpretation of that is your physiologic age will be 16. Your heart will function like it was when you were 16 years old. Your muscles will be like they were when you were 16 years old. Your bones will be as strong as they were. Your hair, your nails, everything about you will be like you were when you were at your physiological peak at the age of 16. So that's step number 8. As a result of the previous 7 steps, your physiologic age has been reversed. When you got started, if you were of average health, and you're 60 years old and your physiological age is also 60 years old. Okay, that would be a normal person. Somebody that's 30 years old, but their physiologic age is 50, that's accelerated aging. They're getting ready to suffer a premature death. Your physiologic age is actually where you determine your life expectancy from that age on. So what's your life expectancy when you're 16 versus what's your life expectancy when you're 60? So even though you're 60, if your physiologic age is back to 16, then your life expectancy returns to what it was when you were 16. See, that's age reversal. And by the same token, if you look at it the other way, you've just extended somebody's lifespan. You've just extended their lifespan. And of course, that's the basis and the promise of How to Eat to Live. So those are the 9 steps of the Abundant Life Healthcare Plan. And so you'll be able to sign up for it if you're serious about regaining your full human potential that's been lost over the years of your life. Well, whatever has been lost, hey, all of that can be regained. All of it can be regained. And these are the 9 steps that have to be done in order for that to occur. And isn't it amazing that just as the old healthcare system is crumbling and falling apart because of a lack of success, it never really did work. Chemical medicine never really did work, never got anybody better, and now it's imploding on itself, especially due to a lack of trust because of its inherent criminality. And so isn't it ironic that at the same time that old system of corrupt medicine, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, yeah, I will not rest until I destroy this medical system, because it used to be a profession of healing, but now it has become a profession of drugs. And the only thing I would add to that, it has become a profession of drugs and vaccines. And it needs to be destroyed. And here's the destruction of it. Just setting the clean glass down beside one that's dirty. Next image, please. So this is what it's all about conceptually. Individual average survival potential scale. Where are you on this scale? See, most people are following the red line, going down towards disability, disease, and death, usually by the age of 70. What we're talking about is intervening somewhere along that downward course and reversing course and going towards longevity and increased health and survival. So this is basically the theoretical concept behind it. There are things that are pressing down your ability to survive, and there are things that would push up your ability to survive. And so it's the balance between those two forces, one positive pushing up, pro-survival, and others pushing down, negative, anti-survival. We change the balance between those forces so that the positive outweighs the negative, and that takes you towards increased, greater survival, age reversal, and life extension. Next image, please. So that's the plan. That's how it works. And as I've already mentioned, if there's something wrong in the body, then it means something went wrong in the food. And you just have to correct that mistake. And that's the basis of what you're looking at. That change from a downward course to an upward course towards greater survival is brought about by nutritional intervention. Food heals, drugs don't. And so the protocols on the website are all nutritional, sometimes with a little herbs added to it. And the nutritional programs of the 9 steps, all of that's all about nutrition. So this is in fulfillment of the promise made by Allah himself and his messenger in How to Eat to Live, that fasting with the right food is the cure for all of our ills. And so after 50 years of research and practice, I can clearly say and truthfully say that promise has been fulfilled. So take advantage of it. We're working on the website. I hate hearing myself sound like a broken record, but it's almost done. And so even if it's not available right now, this minute, we're looking towards Monday as an official launch date for the new website. It might be up before Monday, but we're going to say to give ourselves a safe margin. Everything that I've been talking about here should be available this coming Monday, inshallah. Next image, please. I know Murphy's Law always comes into play. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment. So here's what I was talking about, the ultimate in functional diagnosis. We look at 40 different organs. See across the top there, I know it's written sideways, 40 different organs that we look at. And then we rate each one on a graph like this. And we find out which one is in the negative range. And of all of those in the negative range, which one is the most negative? That's your priority. And then we handle that priority until we get all of them in the positive zone and going towards 100% function. And that's what those 9 steps accomplish. Next image, please. People used to come to see me in person, and I did what they call muscle testing. So we do this remotely now with photographs. It's the same technique, just using photographs instead of you being there in person. And guess what? That gives us the ability to handle a lot more people than we could ever do in person. Next image, please. So it's autonomic response testing.
This is the last image.
Okay, so that's the last image. I thought there was one more because I was going to invite you to invest with us. See, what I've just talked about now with this Abundant Life healthcare plan That's just phase one. That's just phase one that we're launching, inshallah, by this Monday. But there's a phase two. If there's a phase one, got to be a phase two. So phase two is going to cost us another $25,000 to launch. So if you want to help us do that, there's two ways to do that. You can just sign up with the health plan. That's going to help. Or you could make if you just want to make an outright charitable donation to the cause, then you can do that at GoFundMe slash Your Immunity Project, because this is a project of the Your Immunity Project. So GoFundMe slash Your Immunity Project, and make your donation. We're trying to raise $25,000 more on top of the 7,000 or so that we've already raised. So if you want to make that contribution, please do so. So I think that's my portion of tonight's program. And that was about an hour and a half. And so let's take some time, maybe the next 10, 20, 30 minutes to hear from you. So if you're with us on Zoom, you can raise your hand, or if you're on one of the other platforms, let us know that you have a thought in mind, you have a question, you have an idea, you have something that you want to say.
Okay, Dr. Lim, so far, no questions on Facebook, but we have two questions in the chat. The first one is from Sister Karen. She says, Dear Dr. Alim, I have the Add Life Green Superpower powder. Can you share the green cake recipe?
Oh, so she has the Add Life Super Green Powder, which is the formula that I developed during my practice. I was handling a group of patients from Philadelphia who were highly radioactive because of the nuclear power plant in the Philadelphia area that was dumping radioactive wastewater into the Schuylkill River. And here these people were highly radioactive, and I didn't know what to do about it. Long story short, we developed the Super Green Powder, now known as Add Life Super Green Powder. And as a part of that development, also came the green cake. As I mentioned earlier, we found out that spirulina and chlorella together work wonderfully to remove radiation and other toxicity from the body, but they taste terrible. It's about the most nasty tasting stuff you ever put in your mouth. And so the miracle of green cake was to make it taste good. And that came to me, that was downloaded to me in a dream. I got that in a dream. I was on the road somewhere in New York and came back home, went to my kitchen. And I just reenacted the dream in my kitchen. And what came out at the end of that was a crude form of green cake. And then over a couple of years, that crude green cake was refined into the product that we have today. So if you're interested in ordering green cake, you can do that. Abundant Life Market, abundantlifemarket.com. And my son Kush will handle your order. Now, he's extremely backed up with the orders, so don't expect a rapid turnaround. But you can order the green cake from abundantlifemarket.com. You can order the Add Life Super Green Powder from addlife.me. Now, all of these links are going to be on the website eventually. So if you haven't written it down, it'll be there later. Now, what's the recipe for green cake? Because I don't mind giving it out. It's real simple. And just because it's called cake doesn't mean that it's cooked. It's completely raw. It's called a cake because it forms itself into a compact cake of super nutrition. So basically, it's a combination of the green powder, honey, and tahini. So essentially, equal amounts of those three ingredients give you green cake. And you can add dried cherries or other dried fruit if you want. I used to toast sesame seeds and include sesame seeds. But the basic ingredients, equal amounts of the green powder, So if you have the Add Life in a pouch, I think it's a 14-ounce pouch. So just add 14 ounces of tahini, which is sesame seed paste. It's almost like peanut butter, but it's made from sesame seeds. It's highly nutritious and very, very energetic, giving a lot of energy and power. And then equal amounts of raw honey. Now, never pasteurized honey. Never buy pasteurized honey. Honey is just like milk. You don't want it pasteurized. If you pasteurize milk, you turned it into something that's not good for you. Same with honey. If you pasteurize honey, you turned it into something that is now toxic. That's why it's not a good idea to cook with honey. You use honey after something is cooked, but don't cook with it, just like the milk. You want it raw. So equal amounts of raw honey, equal amounts of tahini, and the best tahini comes from Ethiopia. It's hard to get sometimes. So if you get the Ethiopian tahini, raw honey, and the green powder, you mix the wet ingredients together first, and then you slowly add in the dry ingredients. And as you stir it with a spatula, the mixture gets stiffer and stiffer until you end up forming it up into a cake. And then at a certain point, you're going to add the dried cherries or whatever, and you add it at that point. But that's your green cake. And it has an indefinite shelf life. It will tend to dry out unless you keep it covered and sealed, but it never spoils. The honey and the very nature of what it's made from prevents spoilage. So I have green cake that's 7, 8 years old. It doesn't spoil. So it qualifies as a perfect survival food. But that's the basic recipe, equal amounts of the powder with equal amounts of honey and tahini.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ling. The next question is Brother Blair. Blair X, he asks, Assalamu alaikum. After watching a YouTube video the other day in iPhones, the technician fixing the phone says, iPhones, there is no 5G that are found inside the phone. Now they continue to say the 5G towers are weaponized as lasers. The iPhone could be a iPhone 17. I was looking again for the video, but didn't find it. Could be mischief making.
Well, I'm not quite sure if there was a question embedded in that, but he raises a serious issue of survival, which is cell phone radiation. I'm not an electronics engineer, but I do have sense enough to read the package insert when I bought my iPhone, my Apple iPhone. And when I read the package insert, it clearly stated to me, do not bring this phone within 2.5 centimeters of your body. Otherwise, harm might result. Well, when I read that, that made sense to me because the phone operates on the basis of microwaves. So the same microwave that can cook food can cook you. So the manufacturer of the iPhone was honest enough to give you a warning in the package insert not to touch this product. So that's why I always carry my cell phone on a stick. And I hardly ever touch it because they warned me that it's dangerous. So then when I looked into it a little bit further over the years, I found out that the microwave radiation that makes cell phones work was originally developed at the tail end of World War II by the British. So they developed this microwave radiation that's in cell phones as an electronic weapon. It was always developed as a weapon. And then when the war came to a conclusion, they stopped the weapons development. But then later, with the onset of more advanced transistor technology, miniaturization of components, well, then they took this old technology that's now called 5G and 6G, and they're rolling out 6G as we speak in China. where in 2019, that's when they rolled out 5G in Wuhan, China. And when they rolled out 5G in Wuhan, China, all of a sudden there's an outbreak of a viral infection, so-called. And I would expect the same thing to happen with the rollout of 6G. That's probably what's going to trigger the next pandemic that Bill Gates and everybody's going to be talking about. So I would not dismiss the threat of cell phone technology and cell towers. Now, a research friend of mine, George Carlo, he did some of the seminal research. He was actually hired by the cell phone companies, Nokia and some of the other ones. This was maybe 20 years ago. He was hired by them to do research to prove that cell phones were safe. Well, he was an honest researcher, and when he actually started doing the research, he found out the opposite. These things are extremely dangerous. And so I think it was Nokia or one of them, they tried to bribe him to make him change his research results. And he refused to do it. And so this is not new information. The reason why there are 250,000 cell phone towers erected all over America is to create this electronic grid that can be used, as we saw in some of the headlines earlier in the broadcast, they can be used for all kinds of purposes. Now, keep in mind that the same microwaves that cook your food and creates dangerous biological byproducts. So I wouldn't advise using a microwave even to heat up water. It's a dangerous thing. But the same microwave radiation that heats up food and cooks your food is the same microwaves that come out of your cell phone or your iPad or your computer or the cell phone tower down the street or on the church steeple, because they're paying churches to let them put cell towers in the steeple. Or they have fake trees. They look like palm trees, but they're not palm trees. They're cell phone towers emitting 5G radiation. And as I mentioned, rolling out soon, 6G radiation. Well, the thing I'm trying to point out is that the power output from the cell towers nowadays is only 5% of maximum. Some people are being made sick already by the level of radiation coming out of their cell phones, out of their computers. They're doing all kinds of things to protect themselves from the effects of this radiation that is permeating the entire environment. And it's only at 5% capacity. Now, what if they turned up the cell tower radiation output to 100%? Well, look inside your microwave oven the next time and watch what happens to that food item that you put in that microwave. That's what will happen to you in your house. You will be sizzling in your house like a piece of bacon in a frying pan. If they turned it up, if they decided to turn it up, that's all they have to do is just turn it up. They don't even have to turn it up to 100%. If they turn it up to 20%, it would ignite you on fire. So you say, how is America going to burn? All these cell phone towers. And so this is a control mechanism that whoever controls this grid, they pretty much have the power of life and death over the American people. And pretty much the same thing in Europe and other parts of the world. So I used to always warn my patients to stay away from their cell phones. Never sleep in the same room with your cell phone. Limit your use of the cell phone. Never touch it. Use all the protective devices that you can to shield yourself from this harmful radiation. That's one reason why I got my shungite on, and I keep my shungite on. It helps to protect my thymus gland from the radiation from all the cell phones. Even if I am protected from my own personal cell phone, what about my neighbor? Even if I don't have 5G in my house, what about my neighbor? They got it. If I'm out in a public place, the radiation that's affecting me is not just the radiation from my cell phone. What about all the other people in the movie theater? in the sports stadium. All that gets combined together against me. So I'm glad you raised that issue because it's very important to the overall health of people. Radiation causes disease.
Okay, Dr. Alim, the last question for the night is from Sister Barbara Lewis, and she says, Assalamu alaikum. PM 2.5, can interferon help limit the health risk damage? Assalamu alaikum.
What's PM? I don't know what that is.
She says 2.5 can interferon.
Assalamu alaikum. I think it's particulate matter.
Well, one of the things that I was trained as a doctor not to do is use abbreviations. I was trained never to use abbreviations because abbreviations cause confusion, as we are now witnessing. So I'm not going to venture to try to answer a question based on an abbreviation that I do not understand. Even though I understand some abbreviations that other people use, I don't use them myself because I don't want to be the source of confusion. So I don't know what that means. So if there's another question, let's take that. If not, then we'll call it a day.
Okay. Yes, sir. That is the last question for this evening. Praise be to Allah.
And that's a good idea for everyone to keep in mind. See, the best of communication and the best of communicators, despite their ability or skill, communication is always faulty. Something always gets lost in the transmission of information. You know, as hard as I try to convey information, I know if 50% of what I said gets across to you, that's doing good. So when you do other things like use abbreviations and slang and just little slogans and, you know, shorthand ways of seeing things, emojis that are so popular with social media, instead of using words, you're gonna put up some little cartoon face. See, that limits communication and it increases the level of confusion. So I would recommend, you know, to limit that kind of stuff because we already have enough confusion. We don't need to add to it. So thank you. And let me remind you, tomorrow night at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, on these same platforms, we do the geopolitical end of the survival show. And we call that the 19th element. And we're talking about war and peace issues, strategic issues, and all of the things that are going on in the world that make the world so dangerous in the first place. And to keep you up to date so that you know what's coming before it's here. So check us out tomorrow. And then, of course, yours truly, I'm with prayer and fasting on Sundays with a spiritual lecture, and Mondays with what we call here and after questions and answers. So Sunday and Monday, a double header with yours truly with prayer and fasting, and the prayer and fasting family and Chief Malgana. So join us there. And that's me for the week. I do those 4 social media broadcasts, and that's how you keep up with me. So thanks for being a part of our broadcast this evening. Hope to see you tomorrow evening, and join us Sunday and Monday with prayer and fasting. So that's all for me. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam, sir.
Praise be to Allah. And family, this is a quick note. Let us not forget that this Saturday will be part 2 of the Ghana Chronicles with Chief Abdul Malik Muhammad, starting this Saturday, December 13th at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. Part 2 will air this Saturday, so be sure to join us, and we will close out in prayer. Attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the beneficent, the merciful, master of the day of requital. Thee do we serve, and thee do we beseech for help. Guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not those upon whom wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray. I mean,
Ameen.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Dr. Alim, for a beautiful lecture this evening.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for
Thank
your
you, sir.
assistance.
Speak to Allah. And the live has ended. Thank you, family. Thank you, Dr. Alim.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam.